Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Eldon, and joining me is Dalton Grimes, and we've got a really special treat for everyone today. Dalton, do you want to tell everybody about it?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, in that case, we'll see y'all in 2 weeks' time on the next Thursday.
Hey.
What?
We got something to do here tonight.
No. You can't take any more game actions. You already said go.
But you responded.
That's not how it works. No, I didn't respond. I just went to my turn. Yeah. So this is what we have for you all today. It is a really
it's just a bunch of bad jokes.
Oh no, it's just one really drawn out bad joke that we beat to death, and then like keep on beating it long after it's dead, and hopefully it becomes funny again later on.
Maybe it just continues to burn.
The fire heart right there.
That goes out to all you people watching live.
Yeah, watching in the 5 minutes before we started this. So yes, we're talking today about tournament shortcuts, and unfortunately,
I messed up.
Unfortunately, in Moto, you can shortcut through your whole turn pretty easily. In Magic, the real game, you can't shortcut quite as easily.
Number one reason to play paper.
Oh, yeah. That and infinite combos is another thing.
True.
But yeah,
that's true.
Tournament shortcuts. This is going to be a really interesting topic, I think, because it's very important for a real game of Magic. If anyone remembers our episode on timing and priority, and oh my gosh, we went through a whole example where we like didn't shortcut through any of the priority passes, and it was great. Oh my gosh,
great.
Well, I mean, like I really like the technical rules type of stuff, so maybe I'm an exception here.
I did that in the game of Commander a couple weeks ago, just to prove to my friend about priority and passing.
It's really amazing.
It was
how many priority
great.
passes.
I was active player, and they were the third non-active player, so we just all kept taking actions before their turn, like before they'd get a chance to ever respond to anything.
Wow. Yeah,
life was awesome.
So tournament shortcuts happen all the time because, like we showed in the time and priority episode, Magic is not a fun game if all the priority passes have to happen explicitly. And there's some other situations too. Some of the shortcuts are devoted to like handling priority passes. But a lot of them are devoted to other stuff, and the basic kind of concept is all the same, which is that if you have something that happens in the game and the players are unsure about what actually happened, someone has to be right. And the shortcuts are a great way for us to have an unambiguous way to say this person was right in this case. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about. There's a big long list of them. It's in MTR section 4.1, and yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff. And so yeah, let's just get right into it. We'll kind of start with some of these, and later on we'll talk about some of the other like philosophy regarding how shortcuts work. But let's just go through all of them in the first, and maybe like some commentary for these, because if you don't read rules speak perfectly fluently, then some examples can really help like understanding what some of this stuff is talking about.
But hey, that's what judges are here for.
We're here to help.
Don't worry, we've got your back. So I'm gonna put all these on the stack, okay?
All right.
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
Gosh. No, that'd be horrible.
Yeah,
Trying to get through all this as fast as we could.
It really would. No, we gotta take this slow and savor the flavor here.
So to prepare you for this, I believe there are 11 to 13 bullet points, all about shortcuts. And what these are designed to do is not only to make the game easier to understand, but also to give you a sense of how the game is actually moving forward. So, for example, the first one, I will read verbatim here. If the active player passes priority with an empty stack during their first main phase, the non-active player is assumed to be acting in beginning of combat, unless they are affecting whether beginning of combat ability triggers. However, if the non-active player takes no action, the active player has priority at the beginning of combat. Beginning of combat abilities trigger, even ones that target, beginning of combat triggered abilities, even ones that target, may be announced after any non-active player action has resolved.
Okay, so if you guys are...
that's a lot.
If you guys are still awake right now...
Sorry.
Then,
I didn't write it.
Yeah. But this one is actually really great because they changed it. They changed it very recently, And thank goodness, right? Like, thank goodness for this one, because there was a lot of headaches that this shortcut caused in the past. So to give you guys an idea of like places where this is applicable, let's talk about our bro Goblin Rabble Master here. And so Goblin Rabble Master has a triggered ability that triggers at the beginning of combat on your turn. Okay, so like let's say I'm going to play a Goblin Rabble Master, and then I'm going to say go to combat, right? So you say, I'm going to Lightning Bolt Goblin Rabble Master.
No, I'm a blue player. I want to bounce it.
Okay. I'm going to unsummon Goblin Rabble Master.
Yes.
Right? So, he doesn't say win. I just, like, unsummon it. Right? I just pick it back up. Now, do I get a Goblin token? Do I get the Goblin token with Goblin Rabble Master? So, if you think about it, there's two possibilities, right? Like, based on the rules of Magic, it's legal for the answer to be yes or no, right? So if Dalton unsummons Goblin Rabble Master during my main phase, then I will not get a Goblin token because the ability triggers at the beginning of combat. But if he unsummons it in the combat phase, then the triggered ability is already on the stack, and it's going to resolve and give me the Goblin token.
It wouldn't have haste, but
yeah,
you'd still get it.
It would not. Actually, it would have haste because the triggered ability, the triggered ability that generates it does give haste to the Goblin token. So yeah, I'd be taking one.
Cool.
So it's those are our two options, and so when did you unsummon my Goblin Rabble Master? Do I get a token or not?
So in this scenario, and the reason I bring it up is because it happened to one of my friends.
Oh yeah, it happened all the time.
Yeah, so his opponent said combat.
Yeah.
He goes, I'll go ahead and unsummon your Rabble Master. So the opponent goes, okay, cool. Well, before combat, I'll play it again. And it led to some awkward situations there, which explicitly brings up why a rule like this is important. So if the active player wants to move to combat and the non-active player takes an action, then it is assumed to be doing so at the end, it is assumed to be doing so at the beginning of combat. However, if they are choosing to respond to, if they want to make it explicit that they're trying to stop a trigger from happening, like Goblin Rabble Masters, then it's really important that they state whether or not they want to do it.
Wait. It says in the shortcut thing that beginning of combat triggered abilities, if the non-active player takes an action, they are assumed to be acting in the beginning of combat unless they are affecting whether a beginning of combat ability triggers. So because of that clause, we assume that they're not acting in the beginning of combat because unsummoning Goblin Rabble Master affects whether this ability triggers.
Exactly. So you could argue that, maybe he's not responding to the ability. Maybe he wants me to get a goblin.
Yeah.
Is that really likely? Probably not. So we have this rule in place to protect you from that.
Yeah. So the other thing that can happen is if I say Goblin Rabble Master and then I say go to combat, my opponent can be, he can say like, oh, did I miss my trigger? Because I said go to combat, but I didn't announce getting the Goblin token trigger. And so the rules for missed triggers say that the triggered ability is not considered missed until after the point where it affects the visible game state. So when I say go to combat, that means I'm shortcutting to the beginning of combat step, right? But there's a triggered ability that happens at the beginning of combat step. So when my opponent has priority in the beginning of combat step, he's going to have priority, but the triggered ability from Goblin Rabble Master will have been put on the stack by that point. And so because of that, I did not forget my Goblin Rabble Master trigger because it hasn't affected the visible game state. So this is in contrast to something else, like, for example, Surak the Hunt Caller, which has a triggered ability that targets. Now, even though it also triggers at the beginning of combat, because Surak the Hunt Caller's ability has a target, I have to say the target as part of the process of putting this triggered ability on the stack.
Yep. If you remember our rules about classes of information from a couple streams back, things like targets of spells or abilities on the stack, are free information, and as such are also going to be considered part of the visible board state.
Yes. So because of that, and because of how the triggered ability section is written in the IPG, the Surik the Hunt Caller's triggered ability is going to be considered missed if we progress past the point in the game where I was supposed to say what the target is, and I haven't said what the target is. So this was a lot of gotchas until they changed the shortcut to fix it so that saying go to combat didn't skip past the point where this triggered ability was supposed to have a target picked for it. Because it used to be, if I said go to combat and I have a Surik in play, then I wouldn't have the ability to say, oh, and my Surik is targeting this at the beginning of combat. Because the triggered ability is supposed to go on the stack before my opponent gets priority, which is where the shortcut skips to.
Yep.
So that's kind of weird, and it worked pretty dumb. But now we have this line that says beginning of combat triggered abilities, even ones that target, may be announced after any non-active player action has resolved. And so that means that this triggered ability is not going to be considered missed, even if I don't say anything until after I say the phrase go to target. If I say go to target and Dalton says okay, and then I say Surik targets this creature, then I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So that came up a lot, and then another one that came about a lot was stuff like this, Mutavault.
Yes.
So let's say I want to attack with Mutavault. So if I want to attack with some creatures normally, I would say go to combat, and then my opponent would say okay, and then I would tap my creatures to attack with them. But that doesn't work if you have man lands, because if you say go to combat. Yeah. If you say go to combat, then you're in the declare attackers, or you're not in the declare attackers step yet, but you're in the beginning of combat step, which means that if your opponent passes priority and you haven't done anything, then both players pass priority in a row, and then you skip to the declare attacker step.
You progress,
and there isn't a time in between that, in between when you say go to combat and the shortcut skips to the place where your opponent has priority, and when you have to declare your attackers, there isn't a time for you to have priority to activate Mutavault. And that was dumb. And a lot of people didn't get to attack with Mutavaults, and a lot of people didn't get to attack with vehicles. Vehicles was the really big one.
Vehicles, I remember, I think I won one of my pre-release matches because of that. Because
back when vehicles were released, you could definitely F6 your way through being able to attack with your creatures.
And let me tell you, nothing hurts worse
than
a real world F6.
That was real bad. That was a real bad F6 through combat that happened. So those are, I think, like the biggest scenarios where this shortcut kind of takes effect. And if we have any questions in the chat about how this works, obviously this is a really important shortcut to understand. And it also is the one that changed the most recently. There were a lot of different things that changed about this shortcut, by which I mean there were a lot of really serious implications that happened as a result of a relatively small change in this shortcut. But yeah, this one here is the biggest one and the one that's changed the most recently. Do you know off the top of your head which one was the second most recent change out of this list?
All right, let's looky here at my little cheat sheet.
We'll get to it when we can, or we'll talk about it when we get to it, I guess.
All right, I'm gonna circle one, and if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll bring it up when I get there.
That's fine. So the next shortcut that we have is if the active player passes priority on an empty stack in the second main phase, or uses a phrase such as go or your turn at any time, the non-active player is assumed to be acting in the end step unless they're affecting how or whether an end of turn ability triggers. End of turn triggered abilities that do not target resolve after the non-active player passes priority. So there is a lot of text in this one as well. I promise they're not all like this, guys.
Yes.
This is just like the first two that they put in there to like scare off all the people who like don't really want to understand how tournament shortcuts work.
But not you.
But the rest
You're
of this,
here.
the rest of them are very straightforward comparatively. So let's think about like some example questions that's going to help everybody understand this a little bit better. Okay, so let's say I have this sweet magic card. It's called Angelic Accord, and I gained 4 life during my turn. Okay, so Angelic Accord's out. I gained 4 life.
Sounds like you want an angel.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice, right? So Okay.
That's what they're for.
I'm done with my turn, so I'll just say go.
Cool.
And,
Go.
Okay. So,
Sucker.
so in my end step, Dalton says, end step, I'm going to play Faded Ret.
Oh, I was just trying to pass you through it.
Oh, no.
So cool.
No, he has
All right.
Faded Ret, so he's going to kill all my creatures.
You bet. This sounds awesome. Destroy all creatures and planeswalkers?
Yeah.
Take that, Jace.
So that's a really great answer to Jace the Mind Sculptor if you
have 7 mana.
yeah, if you have 7 mana.
A good old mono white
instant
Tron.
Instant speed.
I
So
don't think mono Tron can get
well, Tron, I mean, would be 5.
3 white.
You'd have to have 6 lands in play to be able to play this with Tron,
Yeah.
or you'd have to have like some spheres and
Some
stars.
spheres and stars, yeah.
But yeah, so the situation is, I have Angelic Accord. I gained 4 life. I say go.
Mm-hmm.
Dalton says,
I want to cast Faded Retribution.
okay. So Dalton casts
I
Faded
think.
Ret. Yeah. No, that's right.
Cool. I'm gonna cast this. Bam. Destroy all creatures, planeswalkers. You bet I'm... Oh, no, I'm not gonna scry. It's not my turn.
No. So, and then after all the creatures and planeswalkers are destroyed, I say, okay, I get an angel token now.
No, I cast Faded Retribution. I blew that up.
No. You cast Faded Ret in response to the triggered ability that gives me the angel token.
Well, that's not what I meant.
Too bad. So who's right?
Judge.
Who's right? Does Dave get the angel token or not? So there's a couple interesting things.
Dave get a knuckle sandwich or not?
That'd be a USC aggressive behavior, I believe. That's a DQ.
Oh, no, it's the side.
So there's a couple interesting things going on with this situation. So first of all, this is a triggered ability, and I did not mention the triggered ability when I said go.
Nope.
Okay.
So you missed it.
Well, maybe. That's an interesting point. Did I miss it? Because let's read what the shortcut says.
Ladies and gentlemen, last week, what did you learn?
Cave Tiger doesn't work.
Yeah, sorry about that, Cave Tiger. Turns out being blocked or becoming blocked and becoming blocked by a creature are not the same thing.
Miss. Which was the whole point of that example. So let's read this. Let's read this phrase here. If the active player passes priority or says go, then the non-active player is assumed to be acting in the end step unless they're affecting how or whether an end of turn ability triggers. Okay, so that is not the case here. Faded Ret resolving does not affect how or whether Angelic Accord triggers. So you're assuming we're going to assume that you're acting in the end step.
Correct.
And end of turn triggered abilities, which this is, that do not target, resolve after the non-active player passes priority.
Oh no.
So in this
That's
case,
me.
yeah. So in this case, that triggered ability is still considered to be on the stack when I say go, and as a result, I get it. And even though I didn't say anything, so if Dalton wanted to play Faded Ret at the correct time, which would be after this triggered ability resolves, he would actually have to say, I'm waiting till after Angelic Accord resolves, then I'm going to play Faded Ret. Then you could do that, and it's kind of sad because Dalton has to acknowledge my triggered ability before I do, but that's how the game works. The shortcut rules and the triggered ability rules are written in such a way that is an unintended it's not something we wanted to have happen, but it's something that all the rest of the stuff only works out if it happens or if it can happen.
Yeah, so maybe in this case, I know that David has Angelic Accord out, and maybe I don't want, maybe he's missed it a few turns, and I don't want him to start remembering it now.
Yeah. That's too bad.
But if he does, and I don't explicitly state that I want to do it after that angel token, then I'm kind of in
You're risking
trouble
me
there.
remembering it and getting an angel token.
So sometimes, though you don't have to announce your opponent's missed triggers, sometimes you might have to acknowledge them for your own sake.
Yeah. So here's another thing that can happen. This shortcut says that the non-active player is assumed to be acting in the end step unless they're affecting how or whether an end of turn ability triggers. Okay, so where does that come up? Well, here's a spot where it can come up. Dredge favorite, Prized Amalgam. And Prized Amalgam says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it entered from your graveyard, return Prized Amalgam to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step.
I never noticed the third arm on Prized Amalgam.
Well, we amalgamated a couple of things together.
Apparently.
So
Good
that's
job, girl.
where the extra arms came from. And so yeah. So if we look at this triggered ability, it's kind of interesting because like as lots of dredge players have figured out, if you want to do some dredging, or if you want to like crack a fetch to return your blood gas to play, you need to do it in the second main phase rather than the end step. And the reason is because that way your prized amalgam will come back on that turn instead of at the beginning of the next end step, which is going to be the next turn. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about affecting how or whether an end of turn ability triggers. So because of that line, it isn't strictly necessary for a player to say, I'm doing this in my second main or in the second main phase, because they can point out that the reason that they were doing it is because prized amalgam will trigger. So that doesn't work if prized amalgam is not in the graveyard yet, because then there isn't any triggered ability that they can point to say, yeah, I was doing this in the second main phase because of this triggered ability. But yeah, if it's in the graveyard already, then you can say, use this shortcut to affirm that you are actually acting in the second main phase because you're affecting whether this end of turn ability triggers. That being said, most players who play Dredge are going to explicitly say, I'm doing this in the second main phase, and that's the reason why. It's because they want to be 100% sure that they're being clear, and that's the best practice. Relying on shortcuts can help you, but if you aren't like a scholar of the law and you don't have all these like texts memorized, it's probably better to just be on the safe side and say exactly what you're doing. And that is what judges encourage players to do in any case.
Yep. A lot of what this stream aims to achieve is to help get people better understanding or get in a better understanding of the rules and the knowledge. A lot of it as it applies to judges, but some stuff, like especially the MTR and knowing about all of these different tournament shortcuts, is of vast importance to players as well.
Oh yeah.
Because if you can quote if you are at a tournament and maybe a judge isn't familiar with this, or maybe you're at a side event that's at regular, but you can point out all these different things in the MTR, then you're definitely going to have a much better argument if you think that the judge might be wrong. Which it happens.
It could.
Judges can be wrong.
All right, so whenever a player adds an object to the stack, he or she is assumed to be passing priority unless he or she explicitly announces that he or she intends to retain it. Now, we talked about that in great detail in our timing and priority talk,
yes.
So let's not spend too much time talking about it here. If you are interested in that shortcut, there's a lot of great examples in that talk.
In our first broadcast.
Yeah, our first one. Actually, probably don't watch that because, there's like some embarrassing stuff. Production value is a lot lower. We didn't have the auto card technology at that time.
No, we didn't. We were just holding some cards up.
Yeah, so here's the auto card technology at work here. This is a skull crack.
All right.
We're going to be using this in the next example question. So the relevant shortcut in this case is if a player adds a group of objects to the stack without explicitly retaining priority, then the assumption is that you're adding them individually and allowing each one to resolve before the next one. And so if another player wants to take an action at any point in the middle of the sequence, the action should be reversed up to that point. So let's take a look at how this would work out. I'm gonna. It's going to be my turn.
Okay.
And I'm going to say go.
Cool.
All right. Now, Dalton has some stuff to do in my end step. He's going to crack my skull.
I'm going to tap. I'm going to tap my 4 mountains, and I'm going to cast 2 skull cracks on you.
All right. Double skull crack me.
Double skull crack.
Right.
Take 6.
I'll respond.
Okay. Sounds great.
Heroes we need.
Cool. So you gain no life.
What do you mean I gain no life? I gain 7 life. That's what heroes.
Oh yeah. My bad. I see what's going on now. I don't want you to gain life.
Right.
That sounds gross.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna instead take the second skull crack and skull crack you.
Yeah. See.
So you gain no life.
So what happened is this: when Dalton played both his skull cracks, he added a group of objects to the stack without explicitly retaining priority. So that means that the assumption is that he added each skull crack to the stack individually and let it resolve. So it is possible for Dalton to Skullcrack, retain priority, play a second Skullcrack, in which case it would be possible for me to play Heroes Reunion on top of both those Skullcracks, gain 7 life, and then let the Skullcracks resolve. But that is not
really
what happened.
glad I didn't.
Yeah, that is not what happened because of this shortcut here. Because of this shortcut, what happened is Dalton played Skullcrack number 1, it resolved, and then Dalton played Skullcrack number 2. And doing it that way means that there is no opportunity for me to play Heroes Reunion in a way that gains me 7 life. Because I can play Heroes Reunion in response to Skullcrack number 2, at which point Skullcrack number 1 is already resolved. Or I can play it in response to Skullcrack number 1, and then Dalton can respond with Skullcrack number 2, and it will resolve first, and its effect will stop me from gaining life. So yeah, that's how that works. It's kind of interesting. I'm not a fan of it as a Heroes Reunion player.
Do you actually play it?
No, goodness no.
Okay, I was wondering.
No.
There are actually a couple cards where this comes up a little more importantly. One of the favorites I've heard about is Walking Ballista.
Yeah.
And Croson Grip.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's actually a really good one.
Yeah. So in this scenario, let's pull up our favorite modern boy Walking Ballista. As you know, he's an XX that comes into play with X +1/+1 counters. That's not too bad. You get half your value, but the best part is you can remove a +1/+1 counter from him to shoot a target creature or player, which seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
In this case, we're going to say I'm at 10 life. And David has done some beautiful work with his Walking Ballista. It's a 10/10. All +1/+1 counters, baby.
Max.
All right, so he says, you know what? I'm going to remove all these counters and shoot you for 10. I'm going to say, great. That sounds awesome, David.
I bet he was really excited to take 10 damage there.
Here's this Croson Grip. Get wrecked, scrub.
I mean, that's pretty rectastic.
Yes, it is.
Let's think about how this works. As long as Croson Grip is on the stack, I can't activate any more Walking Ballista activations. So in order for this to work, there is a way that I can legally make this work, but that would involve me removing a counter, holding priority, removing another counter, holding priority, removing a third counter, and so on. Now, the way the shortcut is written, because I didn't explicitly say that I'm holding priority in between each thing, the assumption is that I'm removing a counter, dealing 1 damage, letting that resolve, and then removing the second counter, etc. But the problem with that sequence is it doesn't work in this case, because now there's an opportunity for Dalton to respond to me removing the first counter to play Croson Grip, which there wasn't an ability, or there wasn't a spot for him to respond to that in the first scenario because I retained priority and activated them all at once. So because of this shortcut, I have to explicitly say I'm going to hold priority and take off all 10 counters.
So if you have a Walking Ballista, know that.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing to know. Those Croson Grips and sudden shocks will take you out.
Because otherwise, in this instance, David is going to remove 1 +1/+1 counter from his Walking Ballista,
and he takes 1.
And I take 1, and then his Walking Ballista gets fried, and then I take 1.
Yeah.
And because of that lovely split-second clause, he can't do anything about it.
Just a second. Okay, so the next shortcut on the list,
I want to read it.
Okay.
All right. So if a player casts a spell or activates an ability with X in its mana cost without specifying the value of X, it's assumed to be for all mana currently available in his or her pool.
Okay.
And as we remember from our Classes of Information stream, mana in a pool is free information.
Yes.
So it's not something you can lie or joke or trick about.
Yes.
It's something that is known to all players, and therefore X, if not explicitly stated, is known to all players.
Yeah, in fact, actually, every time you pass priority with mana in your mana pool, you're supposed to say how much there is. Otherwise, it's a game rule violation if you don't say how much mana is in your mana pool. And that can come up. There's a couple of really important situations But maybe in a future date we'll talk about game rule violations specifically.
Yes.
So
there are so many.
what do you want to talk about right now, though, Dalton? Have you got an example for this specific?
Oh, you bet I do, David.
Yeah?
You know what I'm gonna do?
What?
I'm gonna cast Blaze.
Okay.
Blaze. I want you to burn.
Okay.
So I'm gonna tap my 10 lands.
You got it.
I'm gonna blaze you.
Okay.
Target you.
Oh, I'll respond. I'm gonna spell pierce. I'm gonna spell pierce your Blaze.
Oh, cool. Well, it just so happens that Blaze was for X7,
Oh.
so I can pay the 2.
So this is the reason why that shortcut exists. If a player does this, then you can point to them. This is the part in the MTR that says that that's not how that works.
I think the flavor text on this card is actually really nice here in that situation.
Oh, wow. It does. It fits very well. It fits better than the original Spell Pierce's flavor text.
Fool's fire is quickly quenched.
Yep. So, yeah. Now, this is a slightly more interesting situation would be if if Dalton taps all his lands and says Blaze.
I'm going to cast Blaze.
And they'll say, oh, I'll spell Pierce Blaze. Now, if we think about what happened here, Dalton hasn't said who he's targeting yet.
No.
And he also hasn't said how much mana he's putting into this Blaze. But, so if Dalton wanted to be a little bit cheeky.
A rules lawyer,
Yeah,
we'll call it.
A little cheeky. He could perhaps claim that he was still thinking about how he wanted to cast this. He was still thinking about the choices that he was making in the process of casting.
I would like to point out how excellently this video ties into everything else we have done so far.
Yeah, it's like
because as you remember, in our lesson about casting a spell, you announce your spell, choose modes, and then you determine how much you get to determine how much the spell is going to cost before you target a player.
Yes.
So at the point in time where I have said I'm going to cast Blaze on you or targeting you or I'm going to blaze you, anything like that where I'm implying that my target is him, I have already chosen X.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, there's something called out-of-order sequencing that can definitely be applicable in cases like this, but it pays to know the rules better, or at least as much as a rules lawyer does. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to keep that in mind when someone tries to argue with us about that.
Yes. And I would like to remind you as well that a judge is probably going to ask you how much you were planning on spending for X.
Yeah, if you're a good judge, another great way you can combat this is by asking that question. And you might want to consider asking it away from the table and reinforcing to the player that lying to a judge during an investigation has some rather stiff penalties involved,
as well as cheating during a game.
Yeah, well, that
may also have some rather
lying to a judge in an attempt to avoid a penalty or influence a ruling is absolutely grounds for assessing that penalty. So
yeah, it's better to get your spell countered.
Yeah, let's make sure we're all playing fair here, buddy.
All right, your go.
Okay, so the next shortcut is if a player casts a spell or activates an ability and announces choices that are not normally made until resolution, then the player has to stick by those choices unless an opponent responds to that spell. And if an opponent inquires about choices that are made during resolution, then that player is assumed to be passing priority and allowing that spell to resolve. So there's a couple of really great examples we have for this one.
Oh, you bet.
Oh, you better believe we have great examples for this one. So here's one that many of you who play High Tide Legacy may have heard of. It's called Turnabout. So choose artifact, creature, or land. Tap all untapped permanents of the chosen type the target player controls, or untap all tapped permanents that player controls of that type. So pretty interesting card, and the thing that makes it interesting is this example right here. Okay, I'm gonna play Turnabout.
Okay.
So I'm gonna tap 4 lands, and I'm gonna say, okay, Dalton, tap all your lands. So obviously Dalton might.
I don't like that. So I'm just gonna float all this mana then.
Okay. So you're floating all.
Yeah, I'm
you're
gonna float my 10
all
mana.
Okay, you're tapping
Yep,
all that.
tap
mana.
them, float my mana.
Okay.
You bet.
I guess in that case, I'm gonna tap all your creatures then.
No, you said lands.
Yeah. But now I want to tap all your creatures because you tapped all your lands already. So
the rules
does
side
this
with
work?
David here.
Yes, this does work. Oh,
And
gosh.
ouch.
It does. It works really well.
boy.
So the reason for that is because choose artifact, creature, or land is not a choice that is normally made as part of casting the spell. This is a choice that's made on resolution.
Yep.
And
no target, nothing like that. This is just a choice.
yes. And in fact, the tapping or untapping, the choice of whether you're tapping those permanents or untapping those permanents is also a choice that's made on the resolution of turnabout. So if we look at what this shortcut says, it says if a player casts a spell and announces choices that are not normally made until resolution, then I have to stick by those choices. Unless the opponent responds to that spell. So
Yes.
because Dalton responded to me casting turnabout by tapping all those lands, I have the right to change my mind about what choices that I announced.
Yep.
And so even though I said I was going to tap all those lands, because Dalton responded to that, I'm not held to that choice due to how the shortcut is worded. And so I can definitely change my mind. Now, I cannot change my mind to say, oh, instead of tapping all your lands, I want to untap all my lands. And why is that, Dalton?
That's because I didn't care.
You didn't care.
No, I didn't respond.
Oh. Well, no. Like, I play turnabout, and then you
yeah.
tap all your lands.
Oh, yeah.
I say turnabout tapping all your lands.
Yeah.
And then you tap all your lands. So I can change my mind about whether I'm tapping your lands or your creatures.
Yeah.
And I can change my mind about whether I want to, like, tap or untap.
I see. I didn't hear the your lands part.
Yeah.
That's because there is one target in
Yes.
this spell.
Yes.
And that is player.
Right. So I can't change which player is affected because that is a choice that is made as part of casting turnabout. So I can't change that choice in, after hearing what Dalton wants to do in response to this spell, because that isn't information that I would have at the time that I'm deciding who I'm targeting.
Yep.
So,
And what's important to remember is that even though activating mana abilities, such as floating mana, doesn't require the use of the stack, it is still a response.
Yeah.
So if you're taking any game action, activating any sort of ability, you are responding to this. And as such, you give your opponent leeway.
All right. So here's another really exciting example. This is a sweet Magic card. It's called Memoricide. Yes.
Ooh, that's some good artwork.
Yeah.
Man, I love that.
So okay, this is what I was hoping that Thoughtseiz's artwork would be like when they reprinted it. I think this would be a great art for a discard spell.
Yes,
So
that's
okay,
true.
so I'm gonna play Memoricide. Okay.
Sure. Cool.
In your responses,
Well, who are you targeting?
targeting you.
Oh, okay.
obviously.
Cool. All right, so name a non-land card, search target player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name, and exile them.
Yes.
And that player shuffles his or her library.
Yeah. So I'm gonna play Memoricide targeting Dalton.
Okay, cool. What you gonna choose?
Counterspell.
Guess you forced it. Okay, I'll cast counterspell.
Can Dalton cast the counterspell in this situation? Just countering my spell.
The most straightforward spell in probably all of Magic.
I think there might be one more that I thought of that was better, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. So it probably is counterspell. So yeah, is that legit? So Memoricide targeting you, and then the opponent says, "Okay, what are you naming with Memoricide?" I'm gonna name counterspell, and then after that, he tries to counter it. Is that legit or is that not legit?
That is, it's not legit.
Yeah,
to
Dalton
quit.
has to rule against himself.
Not legit. You quit. Is that the saying these days?
I'm far too old to be savvy to any of that sort of information.
All right. So at the time that I ask him what he's going to name, this is not a choice that David must make until the spell has resolved.
Yes.
So by me asking what he wants to choose, I am implying that the spell has resolved as per our tournament shortcuts.
Yeah.
Now, if I said, "Oh, well, I was, just curious."
Yeah, too bad. That's not a bluff.
That's not a bluff. There's no way to go about that. Now, if David had said, "I'm gonna cast more Memoricide, choose counterspell," then he has just willingly given me some information about his spell. And in that choice, if I have a counterspell in hand, I might want to do it.
Yeah. Alternatively, if Dalton says that's fine, I cannot change my mind and say a different card, because that would fall under, if a player casts a spell and announces choices that are not normally made until resolution, the player has to stick with those choices unless the opponent responds. So because Dalton didn't respond in this case, it is not possible for me to change my mind about the choice that I made, even though I actually said it out of turn, so to speak, prematurely. Because of this shortcut, I can't change my mind about it because Dalton has not responded. So that is another example of an application of that shortcut.
Yep. And once again, can't change the target, but can change his choice.
Yeah.
All right. So when you asked me earlier what the newest change was, this is the change that I
This
pegged.
is the one? Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's where my money's on.
So let's okay, before we reveal what the shortcut
We'll
is,
finish the list.
Before we reveal what the shortcut is, we'll say the example then. So is that a shortcut, I guess? Would you say? Okay, so I'm gonna play Grizzly Bear.
Okay.
Okay, tap my 2 mana.
Cool. You got it.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Oh. Well, well, I don't know. That's a really powerful magic card.
Yeah,
I mean,
those Grizzly Bears are very
2/2
intimidating.
for 2.
They're very intimidating.
I'm gonna condescend that.
I feel like probably what would actually be the case is that like Dalton doesn't have a second land, and he really would like to have a second land, because he's not condescending it for 1, he's condescending it for 0.
Even better.
Yeah.
I've done this before. Definitely done this before.
I've 100% condescending.
I've ran a condescend 0 into an uncounterable spell.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can't do that. I'm like,
Ooh,
yes, I
you
can.
sure
I want to
can.
scry.
You sure can. Okay, so I play Grizzly Bears. Dalton says condescend for 0.
Condescend 0.
Can I scry now?
Can I scry now, David?
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Okay, cool. So I'll scry. Your Grizzly Bear goes to the graveyard.
But why? No. Obviously, I'm paying the 0. Like.
No, but you didn't say that.
Yeah. So okay, now this is really really great, especially if you read the CR, because there is a specific line in the CR where it talks about costs that says that a cost of 0 is not paid automatically, and the thing that you have to do to pay a cost of 0 is to acknowledge that you are paying it, which I did not do.
Nope.
I definitely did not do that.
So by
I'm a
the
bad boy.
comprehensive rules,
Yes. The
David
CR
does not
the
get
CR
his
is
bear.
telling me that I get my Grizzly Bears countered by this condescend for 0.
But
MTR
looking at our
rules.
MTR, our tournament rules, we have a player is assumed to have paid any cost of 0 unless he or she announces otherwise.
Yes.
So this puts us in a really fun position
Where the CR is literally wrong.
where the CR and the MTR both disagree.
The CR literally CR literally says that you go with the MTR. There's literally another slot in the CR where it says that.
So the CR says go by the MTR, and in this case, we'll take that. When the two dispute, we're going to stick with the MTR.
Yeah.
So in this case, I condescended for 0. I'm not very condescending, I guess. So I get to scry. I get to do that. But David does not have to explicitly state that he's paying 0.
Yep.
So
Yep.
he gets his bear.
So obviously this shortcut doesn't really come up a whole lot because there's a lot of ways that it can come up. This was another really good one.
Yeah, the weird Echo Zeros.
The Echo 0. So that's an interesting one because there's literally some times where you might want to not pay the Echo cost so the op doesn't get to draw 3 cards. We can talk more about those at another time. Maybe in a compilation show. Maybe once we get
Ooh.
that. Oh boy, that is going to be great. So
let's hop to the next one.
Yeah, that's kind of pretty corner casey, so we won't spend a lot of time about that today. Okay, so we're gonna go back to casting Ye Old Grizzly Bear, and obviously Dalton does not want me to have such a powerful magic card. So that's why he brings a mana leak to a Grizzly Bear fight.
Yeah, you know what? The fatal flaw in every Grizzly plan is the assumption that you know more than your enemy.
Yeah, well, I windmill slam this Dispel, so...
But I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, you don't. Well,
I don't know.
okay.
So I'm a counter it.
Counter.
I'm a counter.
Okay.
Counterspell.
Counterspell.
You bet. Counterspell.
Okay. So counterspell resolves,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
I put my dispel in the graveyard.
Yep.
And now I'm gonna pay 3 from the mana leak.
No, I counterspelled the Grizzly Bear.
Okay. So this is where this shortcut comes into play, and this shortcut says that a player who casts a spell that targets an object on the stack is assumed to be targeting the legal spell closest to the top of the stack unless he specifies otherwise. So, okay, we'll remind everybody what the stack looks like. My Grizzly Bear, Dalton, we need your hands too.
My Mana Leak.
My Dispel.
My Counterspell.
Okay, so neither of us, like when none of these counterspells, none of these 3 counterspells had a target announced for them.
Nope.
When we played them. We just like window slammed it on
I
the
almost
board and
did.
tapped the mana.
Almost did.
Yeah. So
Almost whoopsed.
okay, so our top
There's my
object of the
face.
stack is going to be the counter spell,
You bet.
and because Dalton didn't say what object his counterspell was targeting, the shortcut says that it's countering the legal object closest to the top of the stack, which in this case would be my die spell. So my dispel is going to get countered, and then his mana leak is still going to be on the stack, so that's going to resolve, and I'm going to pay 3 for the mana leak. So that's how that works. If Dalton wanted to target my Grizzly Bear with counterspell, which is probably the more correct thing to do from
Yes.
a gameplay standpoint, you have to actually say that you're targeting not the top spell.
And what do we define as the target of the legal spell closest to the top of the stack?
Yeah, so when I said dispel with no targets, I didn't have to announce a target because there's only one spell that dispel could target, which is the mana leak. I can't dispel my own Grizzly Bear. So even though I would, by this shortcut, I would be targeting the mana leak
Was dispel
anyway.
target instant?
Yeah, it's target instant. So you can only target mostly counter spells with it.
Yeah. So if for some reason he's made all of, I don't know, let's just say he's casting like a Supreme Verdict that can't be countered.
Yeah.
Or Abrupt Decay is probably a better use of this.
Yeah.
And I say, you know what, I'm going to cast this spell, and he counters it with a Dispel. And then I try to counter again. At no point in time would I be able to, without announcing a spell. So like if I just tried to counter something else with an Abrupt Decay on the stack, even if it's the closest to the top, that is still a legal spell, even though it can't be countered, is what I'm trying to get at.
It's tough to think of situations where this comes up, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, Throne
really
the
hard
Last
on the
Troll.
fly.
Throne
There's
the
a
Last
good
Troll is a good one because it can't be countered.
Yep.
So like, if I
Flash it in somehow.
yeah, so that's the problem.
Yeah.
So here's another really, really important situation where this comes into play is Pact of Negation, this specific card. So if we're in a counter war,
Yeah.
I do not want to counter Pact of Negation if I'm going to lose that counter war. So if I play a spell and Dalton plays Pact of Negation, and then I play a counter spell targeting his Pact of Negation, and he Force of Wills. First of all, you want to Force of Will targeting my original spell, because if Pact of Negation resolves, then you have to pay the 5. But if it doesn't resolve, you don't have to pay the 5. So as a result of that, if Pact of Negation is going to... If there's a choice between countering Pact of Negation to let my counterspell resolve and counter your threat card, or using another counterspell to counter the threat card directly, you always have to do that so that their Pact of Negation can resolve. So that's another way that this shortcut can come up if you have a situation like that, where it's strategically important for you to not target the top object of the stack, which would be Pact of Negation, but you rather want to target the bottom object of the stack, which is the original threat card.
Yep. Also, if you do end up countering the original card, does the Pact of Negation resolve or not? Would it still resolve? Well,
Yeah, the answer to that is if Pact of Negation's targets are all illegal, then it will not resolve because the game will counter it. The game rules will counter it.
So if you counter the spell that Pact is targeting, it still gets countered.
Yep.
So they won't get that trigger there.
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to... It's a tough balancing act in these counter wars, and there's a lot of different ways that it can go. So you have to...
Just don't play control.
Oh, no.
You know what? Just
don't do it. Says Mr. like Double Skull Crack over here.
Okay. Dude, that is in my modern deck. I promise.
So the next couple don't really have good
examples.
Command. So a player is assumed to be attacking another player with any creatures. If I attack with creatures, the assumption is I'm attacking Dalton, not Dalton's planeswalkers. If I don't say specifically that I'm attacking the planeswalker.
Yep. As a reminder, creatures can attack planeswalkers. It's not like our next topic. Which is a player who chooses an opponent's planeswalkers as a target of a spell or ability that cannot normally target a planeswalker is assumed to be targeting that opponent and redirecting the damage on resolution. So this is like lightning bolt deals damage to target player or creature, and you can still bolt planeswalkers.
Yeah. So if I say bolt your Jace, there's a specific thing that says that even if I don't know how damage redirection rule works, I still can make this play. And that's this right here.
Exactly. So with the creatures, you don't redirect the damage like you do spells. You actually have to declare attackers at a planeswalker. Yes. So if you just say, oh, I'm going to swing 12, and then when you go to resolve damage, you say, oh, well, 5 to your Jace there, it's dead, and 12 to you, it doesn't work.
You can't, and that's not really generally what's going to happen. What's generally going to happen is I'm going to attack with Bloodbraid Elf, and you say, okay, no blocks, whatever. Take the damage. And so then Dalton goes to like adjust his life total down. I'm like, whoa. I wanted to attack my Bloodbraid Elf into your Jace. And the answer to that is, sorry about that whammy.
Jace the Mind Sculptor, greater than MTR.
Yeah. So in this case, Jace hides behind his protective shield of the MTR and says, yes, because Dave did not specifically say that I am attacking at Jace when I declared my attacks, the Magic Tournament rules are going to assume that I am, in fact, attacking Dalton and not any planeswalkers that he controls.
All right. So,
so
one of our nearly last ones.
Yeah,
there's two more.
Yeah, 2 more shortcuts. And this one this one is the answer. This is the one that got updated the most recently.
That makes sense.
Besides the combat one.
Okay, so I was wrong. Don't worry, friends.
So,
wait, the combat one was?
The combat one was the most recent.
Okay.
And then this one is the second most recent.
Oh, cool. Got it.
Actually, if you want to count the Go shortcut, that one actually had its wording changed subtly at the same time as the combat one. So, you can count those however you want to count.
That's cool.
Whether that's one change or 2.
All right. I like the last bullet point, so you do this one.
Okay. So this example is the following. Dalton's going to play Grizzly Bears now.
Yep.
Right? Those Grizzly Bears just love getting countered.
What?
Yeah, because I got this dissolved.
Can't I just have my Grizzly Bear?
No, man. No, it's too powerful. So I'm going to dissolve your Grizzly Bear. Grizzly Bear goes to the graveyard. And I forget to scry.
Okay? Oh, no. Yeah. You didn't forget.
I forgot. Like, I still... People forgot... Let me tell you, if you were playing in Theros block, people forgot to scry on this all the time. It was very regular occurrence. And, obviously, because, like, when I play Dissolve, I'm not thinking, like, oh, yeah, and I get to scry one. You're thinking, like, yeah, he's got, like, this threat card that I'm dissolving. Get that in the graveyard, Like, so...
And then maybe I can scry.
Yeah, I forget to scry, and a judge is watching. Should the judge intervene?
Yeah. So, according to the MTR, even if you forgot to scry, you didn't forget.
Yeah, you just scried and put it on top. So it used to be in the oldie days that before the shortcut got amended, it used to be that if you didn't scry, you were committing a game rule violation because you didn't follow the instructions of dissolve as they were written, and so that was a GRV, and the judge had to like give you a warning and investigate to the opponent, investigate to make sure the opponent also forgot and like wasn't intentionally not calling attention to a game rule violation, which is also cheating, in an attempt to keep his opponent from getting to scry one. So that was really fun, getting to do that. And so then they fixed the shortcut. And now, if you sleep a scry, then you are assumed to be putting it on top.
Yep.
So that is the really great one is because like if you played a temple, like the temples, like when it comes into play Scry one and you sleep that's fine. You can sleep that one all day long, and that's not a GRV at all because it's a miss trigger. So you got to you also, in addition to that, you got to explain to them why the judge who like last round let his opponent not have a warning when he slept his triggered ability for scrying one with his temple. You also had to explain why that was also the correct rule and what the difference between those situations was. It was great. Oh boy.
So now, Theros is when I started playing, but it was not competitive at all.
Yeah.
I think I had this like blue-red deck that had Gutter Snipes and Phantom Warrior. I think it's a 3-drop 2/2 unblockable.
Yeah, the unblockable.
Man, that was my guy.
Yeah. So
I thought he was so good.
This shortcut was changed in Theros block. Theros was the third time that Scry was in Magic. The first time that Scry was in Magic, every card that had Scry had it at the very end, and it was always Scry 2. And so this, with Serum Visions, there wasn't a lot of forgetting to Scry with Serum Visions because it's like pretty important reason why you're playing the card. And then when they brought back Scry in Time Spiral block, the Scry cards had the scrying as like an actual like integral part of the effect. Like, the Scry 3 is like part of what makes Judge Unworthy a playable card, is the fact that you can influence how much damage you're going to get to do to that creature.
I forgot.
So
Whoops.
Finally, the third time they put Scry in, it was very not connected at all with what the cards were doing, and so like there was a lot of psychological. I'm gonna play this, and then I forgot to Scry because like I wasn't thinking about Scrying one. I was thinking about countering their spell. Right, like that's the important one. All right, so the last shortcut,
oh boy,
that Dalton has claimed for himself.
Yes, I love multiplayer.
Yes,
like
I'm
not
a multiplayer shortcut.
Like I play competitive at times. Like I'm not afraid to hit up an SCG or a GP, but I definitely prefer a commander, or two-headed giant. So in the two-headed giant format, attacking creatures are assumed to be assigning combat damage to the defending team's primary head. Ha! Bet you didn't know they had those.
Yeah.
Unless the creature's controller specifies otherwise.
Yeah.
So in a game of two-headed giant, you would think that you're both equals, but that's not quite true.
No.
One head is a little bit bigger than the other.
Yes.
And
that's
usually
important.
that's the head sitting on the right.
Yes.
So
he's
in our
always
scenario,
right if you disagree. You get it?
So in our scenario, the way we're actually sitting, David would be our primary head for two-headed giant. And if our opponents go ahead and declare attackers at us, they are attacking David.
Yes.
Why is this relevant?
No. They're attacking the team.
They're attacking the team.
They're attacking the team as a whole. But when the combat damage gets assigned, they're going to assign it to me.
Yep. So why is this relevant? Isn't your life total the same? Shouldn't you just take damage equally?
So there are actually a couple of cases where this one can come up. So for example, our friend Sphere of Heliod, let's say that Dalton controls a Sphere of Heliod.
Cool.
And I do not.
Sphere sounds cool.
Which means that it would probably be a smart idea for our opponents to assign all the combat damage to me, because then the creatures would not be considered to have dealt damage to Dalton this turn, even though they did damage and that caused our combined life total to go down. Because they assigned the combat damage to the head that did not control a Spear of Heliod. Spear of Heliod is remarkably unhelpful in this case, and does not have the ability to destroy any of those creatures.
So that's something to be aware of. There are also some triggered abilities, like whenever a creature attacks this player, put a counter on it. Those can be very relevant in Commander as well.
Which player would have to discard
cards. So, things to be aware of. But that is the whole list of bullet points outlined in tournament shortcuts.
All right. So, any questions before we wrap up?
We've said a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry we haven't stopped a little sooner to ask. But
there's a lot of shortcuts as it turns out, so we kind of had to rush through some stuff. One other thing, while we're talking about it, do you know, Dalton, what the reason is for this line? A player may not request priority and take no action with it. If a player decides he does not wish to do anything, the request is nullified and priority is returned to the player who originally had it.
You bet I do.
Oh boy, that was great.
That was in our first episode.
It kind of was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So this is specifically outlined in tournament shortcuts. So as a reminder on this, let's say David's in his main phase.
Yeah.
Or let's go
let's
go second main.
Second main's okay.
And I have my good old friend Prized Amalgam in the graveyard. I want to make sure that I don't miss this trigger, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, hey David, in your second main, I'm going to do this. And he says, okay. And then I don't do it. I've asked for priority, and then I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So we just skip David's
even
second
better,
main phase?
Yeah, even better would be like, hey Dave, I want to play a spell while you're thinking. Can I have priority? You don't even have to like say what you're doing.
Yep.
So because Sharky Shark players had figured out that you could do this, and that's how priority works. Because if I pass priority, and then Dalton doesn't do anything with priority once he gets it, and he passes priority, and hey, look, we're on to the end step now. Yeah, the ending phase is
whoopsies.
So yeah, due to scumbaggery of that type, we have this new line. And by new, I mean it's been there for at least 5 years, so at least since I started keeping track of stuff like this. So yeah, that is why that line is there. It fixes it so you cannot do scumbagger stuff like that. So we did have a question that says, if I ask an opponent while searching his library, you just play 3 counterspells, can he not answer? Can he lie and say yes even though he plays 4? So we actually did talk about this a little bit in our last broadcast with classes of information. And the answer is yeah, it is completely okay to do either of those things. The number of copies of a card you play is considered private information because it does not rely on, it is not information that the opponent would normally be able to see. The fact that they are empowered by some effect in the game right now to be able to see that does not matter at all. And so as a result, this is not a case where the opponent can rely on any information that I give them. This is private information, and you are allowed to not answer the question or even outright lie about it.
Yep. Also, Dr. Hades, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate all of our viewers. We appreciate everybody who watches us on YouTube. We will be putting these up on YouTube so that you can watch if you were not able to be with us tonight. And in 2 weeks' time, we will be performing our next broadcast. That is going to be on March 22. And
ooh, that's right before SCG Louisville.
That would be
Cincinnati. That's the one.
Cincinnati, a beautiful format full of teams.
Yep.
Lots of teams of Magic players will be at that event, and
it's
going to
be
judging
exciting.
it.
I will too.
Yeah, I did not get any people willing to take me up on being the standard head on my team. I was a little sad about that.
Aw, I'm sorry.
But
Standard's the head?
Standard's the one that we needed. We needed a standard head.
Well, so in a team event like that, is there a team captain? Is there a primary team member?
So in that type of team event,
I'm just curious. This isn't relevant to. Yeah. This isn't relevant to.
Yeah, in that type of team event, no
shortcuts.
And the reason is because everybody is playing different matches. It doesn't matter. Now, the reason Two-Headed Giant has a primary head is A, because we need one for that shortcut, and also B, because like if there's 2 people and we can't decide on what we want to do,
you win.
So someone has to be the deciding vote, and that's the person who's the primary head.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna pass priority to you.
All right, and I'm going to pass priority also. We will see all of you in 2 weeks' time. Bye, everybody.
Have a good evening, y'all.